Hey guys, welcome to A Little Bit of Monica. A few months ago, I decided that I was going to embark on the booktuber favorites journey of reading people's favorite books from 2023, and my plan did not work out like I had hoped because I ended up getting sick while trying to read these books and film, and it kind of set me back a little bit. However, it has been a couple of months and I still want to share my opinions of some of these books, so I decided to go with the three books that I did end up reading come from three of my very favorite people here on BookTube. So who am I talking about? Well, of course, I am talking about Lexi from Books with Lexi, Mel from Melanie Reads, and Cassidy from Covers with Cassidy. I picked one book from their list of favorite books of 2023, and I decided to read one for each of them. Which books did I end up picking? For Lexi, I decided to read The Passengers by Joan Mars. She gave this 5 stars, and I feel like Lexi and I have pretty similar tastes when it comes to thrillers. A lot of times, not all the time, but sometimes. And her review of this and the way she talked about it and was excited about it really made me feel like I was going to like it. So I decided to give this one a try. For Mel, I decided to pick up The Will of the Many by James Islington. And honestly, this was on Mel and Cassidy's favorite list of 2023, but Mel ended up ranking it higher on her list. So that's why I'm crediting it to her. I have heard a lot of really good things about this book, and I was so excited to pick it up. And I will share with you my thoughts after I share with you the book that I selected for Cassidy. I don't have this one physically, but I ended up reading Along the Razor's Edge by Rob J. Hayes, and I read that on my Kindle because I had KU, and honestly, now that I'm thinking about it, I might still have it, and I think I need to cancel before I get charged the full price again. But that's beside the point. So those are the 3 books that I decided to read for this, and let's get into my reviews of them. I am going to start with The Passengers. This is a super fast-paced thriller. I was actually shocked by how fast it was. I ended up giving this book 4.5 stars. I remember when I was writing my review for this, I did write a little bit of a review for Goodreads right after I finished, just so I would remember some of my thoughts. And I literally wrote in my review, this book was trending towards a 5-star until the last quarter of the book, and then I remember the pace really slowed down, things stopped happening, and I almost lost interest. For the first 75% of this book, I was so invested. I was on the edge of my seat because things were so fast-paced. And then at the end, I don't know what happened, but things really started to fall apart. And then the last chapter, or the last thing that happened, was outstanding, incredible, and kind of redeemed my opinion of this book right at the end. So what is this book about? Well, The Passengers focuses on some AI self-driving cars. And what happens is various people, I believe there's 6 or 7 people, get trapped in their self-driving cars. Nobody knows why. They don't understand what's happening until it's too late. They are inside and they're on camera, and it's being broadcast to the whole world. Everyone can see that these people are trapped in their cars and somebody is pulling all the strings, but they don't understand what's going on. There is something very, very, intense and deep going on behind the scenes, reasons for why this is happening, and those things are going to be uncovered throughout the course of the story. And I just love the way that the characters are portrayed in this. You want to root for them, but also you're learning things that are not so great about each of the characters. So it really forms this, you have to be thinking for yourself while you're reading it. And that's exactly what the characters in the book have to do as well, because everybody is watching this and they are seeing the good and the bad sides of each of the people in these cars. And this comes down to almost a morality or ethical type of standpoint. And I just really, really liked that. I think that the excitement in just the involvement of the technology here, it was just so, so good. And I also remember, and this was something that I had to refresh my memory on with my Goodreads review, but I remember it all came flooding back to me. I remember while I was reading this book that I was thinking, this is giving me a very similar vibe to how it feels when I am watching an episode of Criminal Minds. I am a huge Criminal Minds fan. I'm actually currently rewatching it with my husband. Well, he's watching it for the first time. And I absolutely love this show. There's just something about the vibe there, this intense feeling that I absolutely love, and I was feeling it so, so strongly in this book. And I had that thought while I was reading of, this just feels like the trajectory of a Criminal Minds episode. And then, I kid you not, I finished this book, and that night, the episode that we were watching together, my husband and I, it was about the killer who was killing people because of the way that AI was taking over the world. Like, he was targeting people because of technology, and specifically the way that AI was starting to, you know, kind of come into play in his life and in life in general. And I was like shook by the way that everything panned out. The fact that I read this book that day, I happened to be reading this book that day and then saw that episode that night. Like, it just, excuse me, what? But it just made everything even better. It made sense why I ended up liking this book so much, because those concepts were like solidified in my mind because of that. The comparison was out of this world and I absolutely loved it. So yes, this book was a 4.5 star. Sometimes thrillers just don't give me quite the emotional response that I'm looking for, or like that like a romance or a fantasy can sometimes give. And this book was giving it to me. I absolutely loved this. So this was definitely a success. I have to give it to Lexi that she picked very, very well for this. And also the fun fact about the passengers is I remember I had the receipt tucked inside the front cover because last year I traveled down to Texas to visit some friends, and we ended up going to a really, really cool bookstore down there, and I found the passengers for pretty cheap and I immediately bought it. And so this book, not only of like picking it because Lexi read it, but also it has this like almost sentimental value to me because I remember where I was when I bought it, and I kept the receipt that has like the timestamp, has the location, and just like it means something because I then had to bring it back with me, which wasn't my smartest decision, buying things and then having to travel with it back, but it was great, so worth it, and this book is so good, and I'm so glad that I have it for my shelves. Moving on to the next book that I decided to read. This one actually was quite a bit of a journey to even get to the point where I was going to be reading it, and then reading it was a journey all its own, and I'm talking about The Will of the Many. So back in the fall, I say fall is more like kind of around the beginning of winter, and I had planned to read this book. I had it on hold from the library. I was very excited, had every intention. I had the audiobook. I was like ready to go read this book. I had it on hold from the library, and it's like funny because I can remember exactly the days that things were happening with this. One, because it was due on my birthday. I remember it was due November 28th. I was so excited, just like counting down the days, and I was watching the app that my library has that would allow me to, you know, make sure that I was getting the book in time. So I was watching this app for when it was going to be due back, when I'd be able to pick it up. The day that it's due comes and goes and nothing's happening. The date doesn't change. I don't get any notifications. I'm getting a little bit concerned, right? Well, a week goes by and I still have no notifications, and the date in the app still says that it's due on the 28th. Like, it's past the 28th. And at this point I'm like, okay, somebody decided not to turn the book in. It's fine. It'll be turned in eventually. It's fine. No worries, right? Okay, so like 3 weeks go by and there's still no change. The app doesn't change. The date isn't changing. It still says that it's due 3 weeks ago. I'm giving up hope. At this point, I'm like, I guess I'm just gonna move on. So I ended up putting this book back onto my TBR and like just kind of moving on from it. Figuring I'll come back later, it's fine. I ended up buying a copy for myself, getting it shipped here, and then I would have it whenever I needed. Now, fast forward to January, and I put it on my TBR again. I was fully prepared, ready to go, really excited to be reading this book. I honestly don't really know a whole lot about the plot going into it, so this was kind of like, I don't know why I was so excited for it, not knowing the plot, but knowing that so many people loved it made me just, I wanted to be a part of that. So finally added to my TBR in January, and what happens? I get COVID. I was down for like a week and a half straight, and then I had COVID brain for like a solid month and a half. I'm honestly convinced that I still have it a little bit. It hangs on quite a bit, and my brain was just not able to process anything. For like 3 weeks straight, I could not process anything. So this book was a little bit hard to get through. Now, what is my review of this book? Well, I can't really tell you too much because I ended up DNFing it. I think I made it, ooh, my bookmark is still here. Let's see, I made it 150 pages into this book, and I still couldn't tell you what this book is about. Now, I'm pretty sure that this book is a school setting. However, I don't remember if I even got to the point where he was at the school yet. We're following a young boy, and the way that this world is structured is that like the rich stay rich and they take from the poor. This sounds like normal world, right? Yes. So they like take the will of the like people below them. And so like if you're like on the top tiers, you get to like take from the power, the energy, like literally the life source of the people at the bottom. And the higher you go, the more people's like energy you get to absorb for yourself. And super messed up. Yeah. We are essentially following this young boy who is taken from like, I think he was in an orphanage or something to that effect. I think his family had been murdered, and he is taken to this school where he's supposed to learn the ways of the world, the ways of the hierarchy, and honestly, I don't know. I didn't get any further than that. I don't understand this book. I can see the potential here, but the world building was so intricate that I simply could not comprehend a single word that I was reading. Like, I had the audiobook and the physical, and I have literally no idea. I mean, I can't even tell you what the book's about. I have no idea. I got nothing. I wanted to love this so much, and I tried so hard. The book itself is really, really pretty. I love the white hardback that's under the dust jacket. It's so pretty. And I've heard so many good things about this book, but unfortunately, it just was not for me, at least at that time. Like, right book, wrong time, maybe? At this point, it was wrong book, wrong time. I just could not get into it. I could not enjoy it. And here's the other thing is, the words on the pages of this book are so dang tiny. I swear it took me 5 minutes to get through one page. And that does not make me feel good. Like, no, I don't need the words on a page to be like super huge to make me feel like I'm, you know, making progress. But I felt like I was never turning any of the pages, and it made me feel like I was like dragging my feet, and it was just taking forever to get through. So yeah, this book was not for me, unfortunately. Do I plan on trying it again? Yes, that's why I kept this copy. I don't want to give it up. I want to give it another try when I'm like fully able to process what's happening, like the world building. I just need to be in a mindset of understanding world building. And very clearly, when I tried to read this, I was not in that mood. And then I moved on to other things, and I just ended up never coming back to this. But I will someday. I am like very determined to give this another try and see if it was right book, wrong time kind of deal. I'm hopeful. But for now, unfortunately, I'm sorry, Mel, I ended up DNFing this. So I'm just going to put that down now. But I do have one more book that I want to talk to you about, and that book is Along the Razor's Edge by Rob J. Hayes. Now, this book I did end up reading on my Kindle, and I didn't have the audio for. So this is the only book out of these three that I only read with my eyes. I read it on my Kindle, and honestly, I ended up really, really liking this book. I ended up giving it 4 stars, but in my Goodreads review, I ended up saying it's like a higher 4, just not quite a 5. So it's like between 4 and 4.5, and that is completely solid for me. This is another fantasy, and honestly, I really loved our main character. So Along the Razor's Edge is following Eska, who is in prison, that is like in underground tunnels, which was so cool. The setting, immaculate. I absolutely freaking loved the setting of the underground tunnels. Like, I was so invested, and I feel like the like adventuring and I don't know, like exploring of those tunnels doesn't seem like it should be something that's super interesting, but I was like eating it up. Like, I was having the best time reading this book. So we're following Eska. She is sassy, she is fierce, she is like not taking anyone's shit, absolutely iconic. She has some absolutely brilliant comebacks, and it's just fantastic. I loved her attitude. I loved everything about this character. Now, why was Eska in prison, you might ask? Her and this boy that she grew up with, they essentially were sorcerers. They were using this magical source power to fight on behalf of the side that ended up losing in the battle, and when they lost, they were imprisoned. Now, the way that the magic works here is, I pictured it as like little marbles that you have to swallow, and when they're in your stomach, you can use the power, and like each marble has like a different ability. And this was like a super simplified way of me imagining it, because I'm a visual reader, and trying to like visualize what they were doing was like so difficult sometimes, but also kind of awesome. So basically, as children, they were raised to be training how to use these marbles if they can, because only some people can use them. Otherwise, it'll like cause their bodies to like break down, and they'll have like reactions to it, and you could die. So these two characters grew up together being trained to use these sources, and once they get old enough to be a part of the battle, which like honestly they weren't really even old enough, it was just that they were desperate, so they had to throw them in. before they were really old enough to be able to handle war. Anyway, they ended up losing and being put in prison. Now Eska is being interviewed by the prison guard and trying to get more information from her. And she's like, I'm not going to help you, my dude. Eska, absolutely iconic. Love her every single step of the way. Well, they then need to find a way to get out of this prison because they realize that they're not going to survive. Like, they're going to die in this prison if they don't find a way out. So a lot of this book follows their many, many attempts at finding a way out of this underground prison. And when they do end up finding some possible ways, things get real dicey. They meet some really difficult people and they end up encountering some very creepy creatures. Are they creatures? I'm not really sure what to call them, but they encounter some really weird stuff. And honestly, I just feel like the adventure of this book was so much fun. It really like pulled me in and it made me feel like I was living in that world. And that's what I want when I'm reading, especially a fantasy. I want to have that escapism into the world and feel like I'm right there. And I really did, especially because Eska was a relatable character. Not necessarily that the things she did were relatable to me because no, but she felt real because she was like, genuinely reacting to things the way a person would if they were traumatized, if they were just trying to survive. And that's exactly what she was. And I just really, really appreciated that. So this book ended up being so freaking good. I didn't stop thinking about it for days after finishing it. I absolutely ate this up. Like, I had the best time. The best time. And I feel like epic high fantasy sometimes for me is a little bit harder to get into because some world building, if I can't visualize it, I'm gonna struggle with it. And this one, I absolutely loved it. I had a fantastic time visualizing everything and really falling in love with these characters. Loving and hating them appropriately because there were some very hateable characters in here and I loved to hate them. It was fantastic. Absolutely amazing. This was my first experience with Rob J. Hayes and it makes me want to read more. Have I read the second book in the series yet? No. However, when I finished this ebook and it prompted me to like read now on KU, yeah, I almost hit read now. I almost moved on right away. I didn't, but I will be continuing at some point because this was so good. And honestly, the fact that all three of these books that I read for these booktuber favorites, they were all first times with these authors, and I really, really liked being able to experience that. John Mars, absolutely an author that I would read again. Rob J. Hayes, I already plan on reading the sequel. James Islington, I want to read another book from him, but I do feel like I need to give this book another try before I do that. However, this was still so much fun, and I just really love getting to read some of the favorite books of some of my favorite people. And even though we don't have necessarily the same exact taste in books, I am still so glad that I was able to do this and just try out some of their favorites and maybe find some new favorites of my own, because The Passengers and Along the Razor's Edge, they're going to be up there this year. They are going to be up there. The Will of the Many, maybe not so much. But with all that said, I would love to hear some thoughts from you. If you've read any of these books, I would love to hear how you thought, if they became instant favorites for you, or maybe they didn't hit as hard as they do for other people. I would love to hear your opinions on those. Or if you haven't tried them yet, I definitely recommend that you do. If you love thrillers, give The Passengers a try. If you love fantasy, Along the Razor's Edge, please. If you love fantasy, you might also want to give The Will of the Many a try. I know a lot of people have really been loving it, and I feel left out that I didn't. But unfortunately, yeah, I'm not gonna push myself through a book that was just, my brain could not handle it. But I really, really hope that if you like fantasy and you love world building, you give that one a try as well. And now I do want to do one more shout out to Lexi, Mel, and Cassidy. If you are not already subscribed to them, what are you doing? What are you doing? Go to their channel, hit the subscribe button. You do not want to miss out on all of their incredible content. They are wonderful people, wonderful friends, and they have some great taste in books, even if we don't always agree. I love them so dearly, so please make sure that you subscribe to them. If you like this video and you want to see more from me as well, please hit that subscribe button so that you can follow along with my future videos and my reading journey throughout this year. I am very excited for things that I have coming, and I also have been really loving doing weekly vlogs, so you can count on those to come in the future as well. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I really hope that I will see you in the next one. Bye!